Well, so this is going to be part 3, and it's going to be the segue from the understanding to the next, which is going to be my discussion on perspective. So we were just talking about understanding, and I'm going to combine this with learning how to do something. So I've got these plates here, and I sheared them off so the corners are very sharp. And when you're making stuff out of steel, taking off that sharpness is important, because when you're making things for people, the most important thing is the safety of people. So you're always going to want to do that. In my shop, generally speaking, I teach people you cut and then you take the sharp edges off immediately, because then we all benefit from the safety of not having sharp edges when you're handling it, when you're punching the holes or doing the bending. It just minimizes the risk. That's important. It's a good understanding to have, good work practices. That's not the point of this, but while I was doing that, I pressed the button on my little grinder there. I did the first one, and then the grinder stopped working. Now I had it plugged in, and I was wiggling the little plug here, and there seems to be a break in here because it's sort of intermittent as I twist it. So while I talk about the concept of understanding, what I'll do is I'm going to show you the way I replace a plug. So we were talking about understanding, that quote from H.G. Wells about a perspective, and this is what we're going to be working on soon, is a perspective. H.G. Wells wrote that book in the 1920s. Let me see. There we go. So I like to take off quite a bit, and what I do is I bend it and then I score it very gently till it starts to break. H.G. Wells was a British scholar, a gentleman, and the British influence on the world is significant. You cannot deny this. And I agree that it's certainly not all good. There were a lot of real bad apples in the whole process. But at the same time, it's similar to a Eastern sort of Buddhist thing with the yin and the yang. This is what religions really shine about. It's scriptures concerning how to deal with this. Almost like society has two conflicting forces that are opposing each other. A lot of people try to make things black and white. Black and white is so much simpler. This is called black tape, but it's red. So things that are black are not always black. Things that are white are not always white. That's an important part of the understanding. And that depends on the perspective. So Einstein did something very interesting. He was a smart man. He recommended the book by H.G. Wells as an important work for history. Einstein was considered to be one of the more intelligent people. I mean, still can't believe what he did, but so he was able to look at the problem from a different point in time and space to explain what he saw as a problem with the knowledge. So science at that time, so Einstein was in the end of the 1800s, so this is like coming up to the end of the Enlightenment period. And, oh, that's interesting. There's only 2 wires here. So, Einstein was a pretty clever fellow. And Newton was a British fellow. And the British felt pretty smart about themselves. And what H.G. Wells did in his books, actually effectively knocked them down a notch. I was surprised by that. So he provided a lot of there we go. Oh, that's not right, eh? So then what I like doing is, since we don't need the green one, I'm going to cut the green one off right there. All right. And then we're going to cut the black one off here. All right. You watching? And then we'll cut the white one off here. And that puts the 2 splices in different places. So at the time when that book was written, it was kind of still a relatively new and novel thing, the printing of books and being able to relatively cheaply create a book. So I just plugged in my soldering iron to create a book that's that can be widely distributed, and newspapers were quite the rage too at the time. I'm amazed at how significant I think that the medium of communication, the primary medium of communication, is so significantly important to the human species. And really what this series is going to be about is talking about the nature, trying to make sense of the nature of the human species, because we have compelling evidence that states that we are a natural part of our planet. We aren't aliens. We weren't granted ultimate control and power over the plants and animals by a god. Animals get upset with us. There we go. But these stages of evolution of mediums of communication, the primary medium of communication, I am blown away at how it's changed in my lifetime. And, to say that, my parents' lifetime too. My mother was born in a house that had no electricity, no running water, and a leaky roof. And the newspapers, brought the news from overseas of the family that were in Europe at a very, very strange time, because my mom was born during World War II. So, and since then, they got a phone, a party line, that had all the neighbors on the same line, and the phone would ring with different tones. And understanding comes from communication. And understanding is always between two people. If Einstein had failed to explain his theory of relativity to other people, he would not have been remembered as the man who the man to have discovered the theory of relativity, which had a much better explanation for what we are observing in space and time. And he did this from looking at the world from a different perspective. So this is what I've been trying to do my whole life. I have a perspective. I am of European descent. All my ancestors, as far as I know, were European. I'm not saying this to say that I'm a superior being. I'm just saying it is. And if you go to the trouble of reading H.G. Wells, you'll see that he was very humble. And he credited much of what the British achieved to contribution from all sorts of people. It was about working together. It was about working with each other. And there was conflict, and we like to focus on the conflict. And why is this thing not getting hot? So in nature, another point to make, in nature, life adapts to changes in its environment. Now, why does it do this? Does it do this because the other members of the species force them to adapt? Or do they adapt because they must? Or is it a combination of both? Who made who? Why do we get up every morning? Why do we do stuff? Why do we have to have a job? Why do we have to make money? This is ridiculous. What is going on here? Is this not screwed in or something? It was kind of loose. Maybe that'll heat up now. So since I was born, my grandma still had a party line. When I graduated from high school, the internet was born. I'm of the generation, the last one to have lived through adolescence with no internet. So this is called a tinning process. I'm not very elegant. So this is kind of the way I like doing it. You don't have to do it this way. You can do it any way you want. I don't really care, but this I'd show you the way I do it, because I think it's clever. It's not my way. I call it the Bolak way. So the thing is, what I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that we are experiencing change, a very, very rapid change. So I've believed that wholeheartedly. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a conservative. I'm conservative meaning that we don't have a choice in the matter. We are free to do as we choose. We need to live with those consequences. That involves what we do as a singular unit, and also as what we choose to do as a group. You know what we really need to do is clean the tip of this. So I'm going to go, so all understandings are between two people with two different perspectives. The characteristics and qualities, the experiences, and the ancestry of those people make up their perspective. Their experiences in life, the phenomena that they have collected. Did they manage to make it through university? Did they work in factories? Were they given a big inheritance? So many different things. Ouch. So many different things and ways of looking at the world. And there's some scary things going on in the world too, and I'd like to touch on them too, but it's a difficult subject to touch on the scary things because they're scary. But fear is part of life. There are things to be fearful of. And when you're younger, you tend to fear what can affect you. As you get older, if you have kids and raise them up, there's other things to fear. It might not have to do as much with yourself, but the fear is still there. And for me, the only way that I've ever been able to reduce fear in my life was by learning. So you can read a book by H.G. Wells where he shares his perspective of the world, his knowledge of the world. And it becomes an understanding between you and somebody in the past. And you can take from it the parts that you agree with, that make sense, and you can reject other parts that have been proven to be false, because his writings are full of things that aren't quite sound. He spoke with a great conviction about many things that are commonly not considered sound reasoning anymore. And So this is just the way I do it. Sometimes I make the splice a little bit shorter because it's taken a lot of black tape. But it makes for a pretty good splice. Makes for a longer wire. It's a good way to fix your power tools. Doesn't take too long. So in my next episode, part 1, I'm going to be talking about perspective. And I'll be doing a little bit about my perspective and about what perspective, how do we develop our perspective of the world? How does that correlate with other people? Because when I'm frightened about something, for me to reduce my fears, I have to learn. And I learn from 3 things. Research on the theory of the thing that I'm fearful of. So if I'm fearful of something, I'll do some research on it. Because I find that misunderstandings are the cause of my fears. So to dispel those misunderstandings, you seek understandings. You do your research, practice and experiment, communicate with other people, especially in your community. And that will build understandings. Now, communication is key. The medium of communication has changed dramatically since 1988. And this is significant to our now global community of people. Are nations right or wrong? Can we erase the borders? I don't think so. The things that happened in the past, and they are the circumstances beyond our control. We kind of have to live with what we got and understand how to work within it and understand how to let this adapt to allow this new medium of communication, which is the internet. It is important that it stays free and open. I think that is of significant importance, and this is very hotly debated right now as to what that means. Are we all free to say whatever we want? It's a great question. It's a great question. I'm making these videos and I'm exercising my free right to say what I want to say, and I hope it doesn't offend anybody, but I'm sure it will. I've never not offended somebody. People are constantly offended around me. Does that make me an offensive person? Maybe. Anyways, so I do eventually want to get into talking about policy change, because I have some ideas about what we can do to help alleviate the strains that we are having on international global relations and also on our environment. And climate change is, of course, a bit of a buzzword right now. I'm not a climate change denier, but I'm certainly not a climate change panicker. I believe that we have all the technologies at our disposal to do something to minimize our future risks of cataclysmic disaster. It's not something to be fearful of or panic or fight over, but it's something that we need to work together to solve. So that's kind of what I'm understanding right now. So if you're fearful, learn. The ability for you to learn to think is probably your greatest asset. All right. If you're interested in this sort of weird content, me rambling on while I do something in my shop, if this is what you like, please like and subscribe. But then again, if I get lots of likes and subscribes, then I sort of end up with a sunk cost fallacy. I'll have to do more of these, and it will take me away from the stuff I love doing, which is just doing stuff in my community. I do stuff of value for people. I cut and I drill and I bend and I make things. And that's what I do for a living. and I do it for people in my community. I do it for basically people who want to hire me, and I enjoy it. This is idea that I'm an independent person. I call myself an industrial artisan. I have nothing against the advancements of technologies, but I'm more comfortable and I prefer using more old and primitive technologies just because of the low cost and the pleasure of like maybe an old tow motor forklift or something like that. So so yeah, if you like this content, like and subscribe. If you like me and you care about me, don't like and subscribe, because I don't need to do this. All right, thank you.